pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth, the 7 deadly sins. The words themselves have a sinister weight, a dark resonance in our culture. They are the capital vices, the wellsprings of spiritual corruption from which countless other sins flow. We know the list. We recognize their destructive power in our world and in our own lives. But have you ever wondered if there is a hierarchy among them? Is one more dangerous than the others? The Church's greatest theologian, the towering intellect of St. Thomas Aquinas, asked this very question. He carefully ranked them, and the one he placed at the very top, the sin, he identified as the most perilous, the very root of all others, is probably not the one you would expect. To understand Aquinas' ranking, we first need to understand what makes a sin deadly or capital. They are not called capital because they are necessarily the most grave sins in themselves. Instead, they are the head sins, the root vices that give rise to many other sins. They are twisted and disordered passions for some good thing. Gluttony is a disordered love of the pleasure of food. Lust is a disordered love of sexual pleasure. Greed is a disordered love of possessions. These sins, while serious, often arise from a weakness of the flesh, a disordered desire for a created good that pulls us away from our ultimate good, which is God. Wrath, too, is a disordered passion, a desire for vengeance that becomes uncontrolled and unjust. Sloth, which is more accurately called acedia, is a deep spiritual sadness, a sorrow about the spiritual good that drains the soul of its energy to pursue God. These are all profoundly dangerous to the soul. But one stands apart. One is not a sin of weakness, but a sin of strength. It is a purely spiritual poison. That sin is envy. Envy is unique among the 7. It finds no pleasure in anything for itself. The greedy man enjoys his money. The gluttonous man enjoys his food. The envious man enjoys nothing. His only experience is a profound and bitter sorrow at the good fortune of another person. He doesn't necessarily want what the other person has. He is simply miserable that the other person has it. The atmosphere around a truly envious person is cold and sterile, devoid of joy. It is the opposite of the Christian virtue of charity, which rejoices in the good of others. Envy sees another's success, virtue, or happiness not as something to celebrate or emulate, but as a personal insult, a diminishment of one's own worth. St. Augustine called it the diabolical sin. Why? Because it is the sin that most closely mirrors the fall of Satan. The devil did not fall because of lust or gluttony. He fell because he could not bear the goodness and greatness of God. He envied God's majesty. Then he envied the happiness of Adam and Eve in the garden. His envy of their innocent relationship with God led him to tempt them, to drag them down into his own misery. Envy, at its core, is a war against goodness itself. This is why it is so spiritually toxic. But even envy, as diabolical as it is, was not the sin that St. Thomas Aquinas placed at the absolute pinnacle of this dark hierarchy. For Aquinas, the queen of all vices, the source and root of all sin, is pride. Pride is the one sin that needs nothing outside of itself to exist. It is a purely internal act of self-worship. It is the disordered and excessive love of one's own excellence. The proud man puts himself in the place of God. He refuses to acknowledge his creaturely dependence on his Creator. He sees his own talents, his own intelligence, his own goodness, not as gifts from God to be used in service, but as personal achievements to be admired. The sound of a proud heart is the echo of its own self-praise, a closed loop that shuts out the voice of God. All other sins, in some way, flow from pride. It was pride that caused the devil to envy God. It is pride that makes a man refuse to be subject to God's law, leading him to greed, lust, and gluttony, feeling he is entitled to these pleasures. It is a wounded pride that often explodes into wrath. It is pride that prevents a man from asking for forgiveness, locking him in his sin. Pride is the very anti-God state of mind. The Catechism quotes St. John Cassian, saying that pride is the serpent, the first author of sin. It is the sin of Adam and Eve, who chose to trust their own judgment over God's command because they wanted to be like gods. This is the fundamental lie of pride, that we can be the source of our own reality, the arbiters of our own truth. Unlike sins like gluttony or lust, which are often obvious in their ugliness, pride can disguise itself as a virtue. It can look like ambition, self-respect, or a desire for excellence. This is what makes it so insidious. It is a poison that can infect our best intentions. We can be proud of our humility. We can be proud of our piety. It is a spiritual cancer that hollows out our virtues from the inside, leaving only an empty shell of self-admiration. The ultimate revelation, the climax of this dark analysis, is understanding why pride is the deadliest. It is the one sin that, by its very nature, makes repentance almost impossible. A lustful man may feel shame. A greedy man may feel fear of poverty. A wrathful man may feel regret. But the truly proud man feels only self-satisfaction. He cannot see his own sin because he is blinded by his own perceived excellence. He cannot ask for God's mercy because, in his heart, he doesn't believe he needs it. And a soul that cannot ask for mercy cannot receive it. This is the eternal tragedy of pride. The fallout of this understanding is a call to radical humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It is thinking of yourself less. It is the virtue of truth, the honest recognition of who we are before God, creatures utterly dependent on Him for our existence and our every success. It is the spiritual foundation upon which all other virtues must be built. The great spiritual battle, then, is not primarily against the temptations of the flesh, but against the subtle, persistent whisper of pride in our own hearts. It is a battle won by gratitude, by service, and by a constant remembrance that every good thing we have is a gift from a loving Father. If you seek to understand the spiritual life with greater depth, consider following our channel for more timeless Catholic wisdom.